Hey, welcome back to the Creative Media Group here at the Rural Storytelling Project. My name is Seth, and today we're going to talk about editing. Now, you may be thinking, we already talked about editing last week, but this time we're going to talk about the technicals with editing and how to make some really awesome videos in iMovie. So just to recap, last week we talked about the importance of editing and what editing does for your video. We talked about how it establishes flow, it establishes tone, and then it also helps promote your message. So these three things are really important to keep in mind as we're going over a tutorial today on iMovie. There are a lot of free editing softwares out there, but iMovie is really the best one. Now, unfortunately, iMovie is only available if you own a Mac or some type of Apple product. So if you don't, I'm really sorry that this won't really apply to you. But there is still a lot of really awesome free softwares out there that you can download and find tutorials on YouTube to use. And honestly, editing software, once you get the hang of it, really isn't that bad. It may seem daunting at first, but in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you some of the tips to make it easier to get started with your video and to figure out how to do things a really simple way. So let's check out iMovie. Let's hop over to my computer. All right, so now that we're in iMovie, I'm going to show you just how to get started. So as you can see here, this is the screen that we're greeted with, and we want to go over to Create New. And when you do that, you want to click on Movie. Now, you don't want to pick Trailer because you get more access to more of the editing functions when you click on Movie. So we're going to click on Movie. And now we're taken to our editing spot. So as you can see here, I have some previous media from different things I've done. And what we need to do first is import the media that we may have filmed. So some of your photos, some of your videos, and your narration that you may have recorded on your phone. All these things are important to import right now. So to do that, you go up and click this little arrow. So you click on that. And then it gives you access to all your files. So what I'm going to do is go into where I have my files, and on your computer it'll obviously be different, but they are right here. So I'm going to highlight them all, and I'm going to click Import All. So now that I have them all here, you can see that an audio file looks like this, whereas video files or pictures look a little different. So what we're going to start with is importing our audio. So to do this, drag your audio from your media spot into your timeline. You'll see it just appears right here. So we'll drag it to the front. And boom, there it is. There's our narration. Now, this is a great way to start because your script, as you remember, is probably the basis for your video. So using your narration as a guide is a great way to see what you need to put and where to put it. You can also edit your audio by going over to volume, and then you can choose how loud it is. So you could drop it down to maybe 50%, 60%. Now, make sure that this is one of the loudest parts that you hear because we want to hear what you're saying. So this is important. So you can always adjust that later as well. Okay, now that we have the audio, it's important to now put the video in. This is the visual part of the story. So we're going to take some of the clips that we have here. And you can also, when you drag over them, you get a preview up in the corner here that shows you what the clip looks like, which is pretty nice. So I have a few shots of my town that I live in here. So I'm going to drag them out onto the timeline. As you can see, they just snap in place. And now you can see that the clips themselves are a lot longer than my narration. So I'm going to have to cut them down. Now, also, just a side thing, this little arrow here, this is what controls how big the timeline is or how zoomed in you are. So as you see, it gets smaller as I do this and then longer. Okay, so with my narration, I want to cut these clips down a little bit so you can see if I drag over the edge of the clip, I can shorten it. So I can click and drag and it'll shorten the clip, and you can see the time of the clip is right there. So I'm going to make this one 5 seconds long. Next one I'm going to make maybe 7 seconds long. And then I'll keep doing that for my other clips, and then you can see that they'll start to fit into my narration. And this actually lets me add one more clip. and I can cut that one down as well. So it's pretty nice. And what I recommend when you're cutting clips, especially at the beginning, is sometimes when you start filming something, you're a little wobbly and then you get steady. So always try to cut that part out of the clip. So you can actually cut from the front as well. So you can do it like this, and then you can make it all nice and concise when you put it all together like that. So editing and shortening your clips, this is really important for, like we talked about last time, keeping the flow moving in your video. So now that I have my video clips, you can also add transitions in between them. To do this, you go up here to transitions, click on that, and then you have all these different options. So I don't recommend doing crazy transitions. I think they're a little corny and they look kind of silly. So something like this cube, that looks kind of silly when I play it. Yeah, you can see it's like nobody likes to use that. So the only transitions I think we should really be using are the cross dissolve, a cross blur, and maybe a fade to white. I think all these different transitions can help you with the flow of your story, but sometimes they can distract. So make sure you're careful about what you use. Okay, so now that we have our video clips in and we have our narration in, now it's time to add some music. Now this is where we get into establishing the tone of your video. So as you can see over here, there's an audio tab, and if you click on this folder, there's a bunch of different things you can look at. You can get sound effects, but we don't really need sound effects for this video. But if you go down to theme music, you can click that, and they have a few options that you can pick. I'm going to click and drag this simple music down, and you can see that you can put it underneath your narration or on top of your narration. Once you do that, your music is playing along with your video and your narration. Now, sometimes you want to make sure your music is not louder than your narration because you want to be able to hear what you're saying and what the story is about. So if you click on simple and you go over to the this little icon, you can see that you can lower the volume. So we'll just make it 40 or maybe 35% or something like that. So that way you can hear the narration and still have the background music playing, which is really handy. Okay, so we have music, we have our narration, we have our video. What's next? Well, I would say it's time to add some titles. So if you go over to titles, this is a great spot where there's a ton of different options here. And again, like I said with transitions, I don't think it's good to use some big flashy titles just because they look kind of corny, and we want these stories to appeal to a broad audience. So I would recommend some of these top titles because they have very subtle and yet nice animations to really look good. So I'm going to drag the expand title down to the front of my video, and I can go up here and edit my text. So I could type my title. So I'll say my story. And then when I do that, I can also make a lot of different edits. I can change the font. I could change the color down here in the corner. So there's a lot of different options that you can do with this, and you can make it really personalized and make it what you want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one little tip I have for when you're importing photos into your projects. So as you can see, I have a photo here that I'm going to drag down from the top. And now photos, when you put them in iMovie, they automatically do this thing called the Ken Burns effect. And this makes your photos look extra cool because it adds an animation to it and it moves it, which is what we want to do with our videos. If your photos are vertical, this is a nice animation to help make it fit into a horizontal box. So as you can see, it automatically edits my photo, makes it look pretty cool. But if I want to change that, I can go up here to the little square, and then you can see I can change the direction it moves. So I could make it start higher and end lower. I could make it zoom in a lot more by adjusting the corners. Or I could make it go the complete opposite way and make it go from bottom to top. So there's a lot of different ways that you can edit it and make it personalized to yourself. Finally, the last tidbit I have is that when you're adding video on top of your narration, make sure that the audio of each of the videos is turned down. Now you can do this by either going over the video, and you see I have a little arrow that I can just scroll all the way down to 0%. We want that because the videos that we're putting on top of our narration, most of the time we don't want the audio. But if you do need the audio, say it's an interview or something else, there is a tool to reduce the background noise to make it sound extra nice. So click on the clip that you want, and we're gonna work with this one. You can see I have some audio down here. And if you go up to this button, it looks like little lines. You can click on reduce background noise and you can say how much you want to reduce it by. Now, the only problem with this tool is that if you reduce it by 100%, it can kind of sound muffled and kind of weird. So I would recommend 50 to 60% as a good way to get some nice audio that sounds good as well. Okay, so now that you've kind of learned the basics of iMovie, I think this is a good starter for trying to put your video stories together. I think this is a great tool to use, and iMovie is super easy, and there's a lot of other tutorials online. So if you need those, feel free to check them out. But I hope this helped, and I can't wait to see the stories that you all create. Next week, we're going to talk about feedback and how to give good constructive feedback when we are kind of working together and making edits for our videos. So look forward to that and look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great week.